Hey, it's Randy at Tilano.net, and this is the instructional video on the DaVinci Tile making kit. This is what you're going to be making right here. It's a 6x8 tile, and much like our fresco tiles, you actually get to make the tile before you do the transfer. So that's what you're going to see next. So now you're going to do a glaze application to the entire surface of the tile. What you use is the DaVinci glaze, and you just pour on a liberal amount, and you just want to coat the surface just to seal in the wood. So I'll take a little bit like that and brush out an even surface. Sometimes you need a little bit more than what I have right there, and that's okay. A little dab goes a long way. I'm just coating over the entire surface of the tile. The reason I do this is it helps to give you a different type of crackle effect once the surface is sealed. So you can leave the wood blank and put the crackle medium on, or you can seal it first, just like we've done here. In this step, I'm going to apply a little bit of crackle on the surface and on the bottom of the tile. On the top and bottom, I should say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a little bit onto the surface here, just like toothpaste on a toothbrush. Get a nice white line like that. And then just work the medium around on the bottom, a little bit like that. If it looks a little bit milky, that's okay, but that's what we're looking for. And do the same on the top. The reason I just do the top and the bottom is because I know my picture is going to go in the middle. So I want to have some distressing, some crackle effect happening on the top and the bottom. You can do the edges if you want. But the most important part is knowing that your image, where your image is going to be, you just don't want to have any cracks running into the face. So now I'm going to let that dry for about 15-20 minutes, and then I'll be ready to put my DaVinci mud on top. Okay, so now I have the crackle that's dry. It's been about 20 minutes. I have a little bit of white in some areas it's a little bit clear, and that's okay. What we want to have is just a little bit of both happening, because in some areas where it's still wet, it'll crack a little bit deeper than others. So take your DaVinci mud. What I use is the brush to pull it out of the container, and you want to get basically a nice even coat of the mud over the entire surface of the tile. So take your spreader and start to coat the entire surface. Simplest way is just think of doing a nice icing on top of a cake. You just don't want to have any pieces of the wood following through, especially in the center, because that's where your picture is going to be. So I just coat the whole surface running north and south. That way. Do one east and west just to get rid of any major ridges, and then we're just going to let it dry about 20 minutes in the oven at 175 degrees, or you can let it dry overnight, but you'll get some nice cracking on the top and some nice cracking on the bottom. Okay, the next step on the DaVinci tile is to sand any ridges that you don't want to have, and then to antique it with the antiquing glaze. So what I'll do is I'll just take a little sandpaper and take away any high spots that I don't want to have. And I don't have to worry about the dust. I don't have to blow it off or anything like that, because I'm going to let the dust act as sort of one of the antiquing agents as I put the glaze on. So, again, always want to have a nice clean surface in the middle, because that's where your image is going to go. Now I'll take the glaze, pour some on like you're pouring maple syrup onto a pancake or some waffles. Get a nice liberal amount. And then take your cheesecloth and work it into the surface. And what happens is the glaze goes into any crevices or undulations that you have on the surface, which is what you're looking for. And what I'll do is I'll try to wipe away the center and have a nice kind of white or antique white look in the center. Gives a nice old world effect. And wiping in circular motions usually is the best way to go. It kind of leaves sort of like a real rustic and natural appearance to the tile. And just pounce out any lines that you don't want. And there you go. Now you're just going to let that glaze dry for an hour, and then we're on to the next step. Okay, in this step we're going to seal the image, and then we're going to seal the tile. Always do the image first and then the tile second. Take a little bit of medium, dip your brush in about a ½ inch in. And what I like to do is work from top to bottom with nice even strokes with a generous amount over their entire surface of your transfer. And I go over it about 3 or 4 times. And then that's it. I don't want to overwork the image, because if I overwork the image, the ink will lift. So 3 or 4 times, nice even strokes, and just let it dry. The next step is to do the tile. So you bring your tile in. Same about a medium, about ½ inch. And then apply that over the entire surface of your DaVinci tile. A nice even coat over the entire surface, because this is acting as an agent to help pull your image off. So you have to have a good seal over your entire DaVinci tile. So there you go, that looks good to me. Now I'll let that dry for about an hour, and then we're ready to do the transfer. Okay, in this step you want to prepare your image before you transfer it onto the surface. So I'm just trimming off the edges because I know this is a 6x8 template, and what I did is I traced the tile over the surface of the image with a little black marker, and now I have a nice clean line where to cut. So I'll just use some scissors. You can use scissors, you can use an X-Acto blade and ruler, whichever you prefer. Sometimes I just be a little bit generous too to oversize it so that the paper will bleed over the edge. Okay, so now I'm ready to transfer the image onto the surface of the DaVinci tile. Take your medium, dip it in about a 1/2 inch, have a nice liberal amount that you coat the entire surface of the tile. And that's critical to a good transfer. You just want a nice even coat over the entire surface. So it should have a nice wet look as I'm brushing it out here. So that looks good. I already cut and sized my image so I know it's rectangular and square where I want it to be. I'm placing it down, kind of work from the center out with your trowel and pull. If you get any medium on the back of your trowel, don't put it onto the surface. Have a little cloth close by that you can wipe it off and get rid of the residue. And you want to pull the medium so that it oozes out to the edge of the tile. That's important to do because it makes sure that there isn't any lifting that occurs on the edges. And I always kind of go from a clockwise center out fashion. And if you see any bubbles, just work your trowel back over that area. And again, try to push the medium out to the surface so that the air bubbles disappear. Now you let that dry for about 20 minutes in the oven at 175 degrees, or 15 minutes even. It's pretty quick. You can use a hair dryer if you like for about 10 minutes, or you can let it air dry for about 2 hours to 3 hours. Now you're going to reveal your image. Your tile's dry, the paper's on nice and tight. Take a little bit of water. And this is where the magic starts, is you get to start to see your image underneath your transfer. The important thing to do is put on a liberal amount of water, and you just want the water to sit on the surface for about 10 to 20 seconds. What it does is it helps to lift the paper off and leave the image behind. So I'm just making sure I have a nice coat over the entire surface. Sometimes you might see a little bit of rippling that might happen on the edges, and that's a good thing. That shows that the water's starting to activate as a lift. So now I'll just pick a corner and peel. There you go. The image stays behind, the paper comes off, and there's your transfer. Sometimes when you've just done the transfer, there's a little bit of water that remains after you've done the peel. Just take a paper towel or a cotton cloth and dab the surface gently. Just remove any dampness that's on the surface before you seal the tile. Okay, you're on to the final step. Before we do that though, we just want to make sure that we've trimmed the edge of the tile and don't have any excess medium on the edges. You can use an X-Acto knife and cut along the edge to get a nice clean line, or you can take a piece of sandpaper and burnish it on the edge of your tile to get rid of the excess medium so you have a nice smooth, professional look tile to it. The idea here is to take your medium again, dip it in, get a nice about a 1/2 inch of medium on the surface, and apply a nice liberal amount over the entire tile. Because what this is going to do is give you a nice satin to a semi-gloss finish on the surface, and it also acts as a little protective coating as well. So usually I go east and west like this, and then a little bit of north and south. As long as you have a nice liberal amount, it should settle down nicely as it dries and leave you a nice professionally matted tile with a nice transfer onto the surface.